Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome to Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, where I've just made a couple of investments. One of them you're looking at right now, DC Designs F14 Tomcat. Comes in two versions, the F14A and this one, the F14B, with numerous liveries for each. This add-on package for Microsoft Flight Sim was released yesterday by DC Designs. It is not freeware, it cost me £25, which I think is a reasonable price for what you get, and does come with comprehensive documentation, including flight checklists, none of which I bothered reading. I just parked it on the runway at Kennedy International Airport in New York State, and I'm just going to have a go. As you can see, I haven't even yet figured out how to turn on the avionics, so no heads-up display, none of that at this early stage. This is literally right after I've installed it and I'm just having a go. Now, to forestall the inevitable questions, no, this is not nearly as complex and comprehensive a simulation of the F-14 as you get in DCS World. But it is pretty good. Most of the cockpit is fully functional, all the buttons and switches work, and it is leagues ahead of DC Design's previous offering, the McDonnell Douglas F-15 Strike Eagle, which is fun, but it's by no means a comprehensive simulation of the F-15. Neither's the Tomcat, but it is better. Now, because I'm in the F-15B, I don't actually need to go full afterburner on takeoff, but I'm going to do it anyway because, hey, why not? There it is, gear up. The F-14A, which is also included in this package, does require full afterburner on takeoff because it's got the extremely underpowered Pratt & Whitney engines that were really not suitable for the Tomcat. These General Electric engines are the engines that this aircraft really should have had right from the start. The variable sweep wings, by the way, are automatic, depending on the speed that you're flying at, but you can also take manual control of them, again, inside the fully functional cockpit. The reason I've decided to take off from JFK and have a blast around New York is because this isn't the only thing that I purchased recently. Just a couple of days ago, although this is the first time I've had it installed and actually seen what it's going to look like, I also got my hands on the remodeled, what they call New York City Times for Microsoft Flight Sim by Samsung 3D. Basically, they've completely remodeled Manhattan Island. In the default sim, which is true of a lot of places in Microsoft Flight Sim, they tend to over-rely on sticking trees everywhere to cover up any deficiencies. And that's definitely the case with Manhattan. I mean, it looks pretty good in the default sim, but I'm looking forward to seeing what Samsung 3D's replacement Manhattan Island, with remodeled buildings and basically everything, is going to look like. So far, I'm very, very happy with the Tomcat. In case you're interested, although I should probably wait until you've seen what it looks like, the New York City Times for Microsoft Flight Sim by Samsung 3D is available on their own website for $15, or just less than $15, $14.95. It's very, very reasonable. My concern was that Manhattan Island is a fairly complex piece of geometry anyway, and if they're going in and adding missing buildings and cleaning up the geometry and basically increasing the level of texture and detail, how exactly is the sim going to handle it? Because Manhattan Island is notorious for tanking your frame rates, or at least it was prior to the introduction of Sim Update 5, when, well, frame rates haven't really been an issue for me since. But they might be now. So I guess we're going to find out. At the moment, I'm having no frame rate issues at all. And this Tomcat really is an absolute joy to fly. And while it's been acknowledged that this is by no means as comprehensive a simulation of the Tomcat as in DCS World, for example, I was curious to see exactly what they had and hadn't modelled, so later on in the video I'm going to be trying to induce compressor stall, which was something that did affect the Tomcat, particularly the F-14A, and could lead to the aircraft going into an extremely hard to recover flat spin, with both of the engines flaring out. So that sounds like fun. Anyway, for now, Manhattan on the horizon. We'll be there in a few minutes. This thing, by the way, is capable of getting from London to Paris in 10 minutes flat. It's not going to take us long to get to Manhattan Island. In fact, we're almost there now. And the frame rates are holding up spectacularly well, but we'll see what happens when we get to my newly remodeled Manhattan, courtesy of Samsung 3D. Wow, look at that. Oh my god, look at that. Oh, we're nearly there, boys. And I'm not even going at full throttle, we're still subsonic. I haven't touched the afterburners yet. Wow, coming over Central Park now. Looking south, down towards the Statue of Liberty. Holy crap, would you look at this? Wow. Coming over the Hudson. It's going to take it in a shallow turn. And then we'll head south and see what we can see. It's Central Park, American Museum of National History. Approaching Midtown. Actually, I want to have a look, because one thing that I was very curious to see was whether or not they've actually modelled the USS Intrepid. Because I've been on board the USS Intrepid, and it's an amazing naval and aerospace museum. And we should be flying over it. No, that's kind of disappointing. That's it, passing just underneath us now. It's certainly better than in the default version of the sim, but I'm still seeing trees on the flight deck, which is what you get when the photogrammetry doesn't really know what it's looking at, and it just kind of fudges up the details by putting trees on them. So that's kind of disappointing. But the rest of Manhattan, wow. This is... and the frame rates are holding up. Although, well, I'm not exactly pushing it to the extreme, am I? I'm still in subsonic flight. And I don't know about you, but I feel the need for speed. So, here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to show off, because I can. And then, we're going to gain some altitude. And then we're going to come back down really, really fast. So, I took her up to, you know what, I wasn't even looking at the altimeter. Really, really high. And now I'm coming back down on full afterburner. Really, really fast. And check out the frame rate. As you can see, the variable sweep wings have adjusted to the speed that I'm doing. And look at this. Oh lordy, 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 look at that. That is amazing. Wow. That is just unbelievable. You know, if you told me 10 years ago that flight sims were going to look like this, I would have laughed in your face. That is incredible. Should we go around and do it again? Well, let's get some altitude. Let's see if we can get high enough to actually see the curvature of the Earth. If Asobo Studios have actually modelled that in, I am going to be impressed. The service ceiling of this thing, by the way, is apparently 60,000 feet. In the sim. I'm not sure what it is in reality. Man, that is one hell of a view. And it's a beautiful aircraft, isn't it? The external fuel tanks, by the way, there's a switch in the cockpit that will allow you to jettison those if you want to go even faster. And we're breaking through the high-level clouds. Again, you know, I don't actually know what the altitude is here because I haven't actually switched on the avionics. I don't yet know how. It's all there in the instruction manual that comes with the purchase of the Tomcat, though. This is just so pretty. I think I'm actually seeing a slight curvature there. It's not particularly pronounced, but I think it is there. The aircraft's wanting to level out now. Wow. Yep. I don't know if it's just an optical illusion with the way the gradient of the atmosphere is shading from dark blue to light blue, but it does look like there's some actual curvature going on. So if that is the case, that's just absolutely amazing. I'm actually rendering this one in 4K rather than the standard 2K because I mean the overwhelming majority, like 98% of people with PC still play at 1080p. But I feel that for this video, I mean, look at that. I play in 4K, I record in 4K, so I'm going to upload this one in 4K. So those of you who can actually watch this in 4K are not going to miss out because this is just astonishingly pretty. Right. Let's bring this baby around and request permission to buzz the tower. And I don't want to hear any of your negative Maverick, the pattern is full shit, alright? We're doing this. Have I mentioned how just amazingly pretty the Tomcat is? While at the same time really looking like it means business. I mean, it doesn't look fragile like the F-16 Viper. This thing looks brutal. But at the same time, those graceful, clean lines. You know what? I've got to hand it to you, America. You really know how to design aircraft. Anyway, let's bring her around. We're heading back to Manhattan. And at this kind of speed, it probably won't take us too long to get there. So we're coming back in from the north, where, as you can see, there's a lot of what seems to be reclaimed swampland. Or partially reclaimed swampland, anyway. And Manhattan Island is about 30 miles to the south from our current location. But we won't take long to get there, not at these kind of speeds. We are actually subsonic again, but don't worry, we'll fix that. I just wanted you to see this swampland. 60 frames per second, by the way, at 4K resolution. Which isn't that impressive because there's not an awful lot of geometry passing by underneath us, but, well, just wait till we get back to Manhattan and we blast through there at Mach 1.2 and we'll see how it handles that. Less than a minute later, Manhattan is in sight. We're still subsonic right now, but we're going to start going really fast as soon as I light the afterburners and start building up some speed. Oh, did you hear that bang? Did you hear that crash? And I very, very nearly pancaked there. That was me going supersonic. And they've actually modelled the Tomcat's tendency for the nose to dip when it goes transonic. They've actually included that in the flight model. Here comes Manhattan Island. Look at the speed. And look at the frame rate. Look at how smooth it is. There goes the Chrysler building. And as quickly as that, we're over Manhattan and we're back on the Hudson River. I am having way too much fun with this Tomcat in Microsoft Flight Sim. You know, I really do need to get my nose into the instruction manual and figure out how the avionics, in particular the autopilot, works on this thing. Because I know it does work. And I really just want to keep flying the Tomcat. And I have the Honeycomb Bravo throttle quadrant, which has an amazing array of autopilot functions on it. So you can set up the autopilot to follow a given flight path and then just use the showcase camera to capture the views. And I can't yet do that with the Tomcat. I haven't figured out how it works yet, but I'm going to do it. Because this thing is amazing. Just a quick flyby of Lady Liberty. There she is. And there she goes. Right, anyway, that's enough messing around. Now it's time to try something serious. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the top of the world. We're currently flying over the Himalayas. We're approaching Mount Everest right now, but none of that's actually important. There's one question which I'm sure many of you were asking. Can you actually get into the back seat in the Rio's position? Yes, you can. You go to Camera, Cockpit, Pilot, select Co-Pilot. Bingo! I'm in the back seat. most of the backseat controls are not actually modelled because this isn't a combat flight simulator. But the option is there. Right, let's get back into the pilot seat. And what I'm going to try to do here is put the aircraft into a compressor stall. And in order to increase my chances of actually being able to induce that compressor stall, I have swapped out the F-14B for the F-14A, because the F-14A was equipped with the Pratt & Whitney TF30 turbofan engines, which could produce quite a lot of power, 20,900 pounds of thrust each, allowing the aircraft to get up to speeds of Mach 2.3. But because the F-14A was such a big, heavy aircraft, the thrust-to-weight ratio at its maximum takeoff weight was really bad, almost half of the thrust-to-weight ratio of something like the F-15A, for example. Now, when it was fitted with the General Electric F-110 engine, it gained a massively improved thrust-to-weight ratio, but this didn't happen until the introduction of the F-14B, which I was flying earlier over New York. This is the F-14A. And these engines on the F-14A were particularly prone to compressor stalls. Now, it's at this point where I start to get a little bit vague on the intricacies of exactly what a compressor stall is and exactly how it affects a turbofan engine. There are different types of compressor stall, and I'm not entirely sure, if I'm being completely honest, exactly which types of compressor stall affected the F-14A, but what I do know is that if you had a high angle of attack and the aircraft started to yaw, it would disrupt the airflow through the compressors in the turbofan, inducing a stall. And if it was particularly bad, it would kill the engines and put you into a flat spin. And that's what I'm trying to reproduce here. So I'm going to need a lot of altitude for this. Well, I'm not going to need a lot of altitude for this. You can have a compressor stall at any altitude. It's just a lot more survivable if you happen to have it at high altitude. Lieutenant Cara Hultgreen of the US Navy died in her F-14A in 1994 when she messed up her approach. Tried to correct it by executing a side slip, and the excessive yaw angle caused a compressor stall in her Tomcat, which, well, when you're on final approach you don't have a lot of altitude to play with, and it resulted in her death. So now I'm going to attempt to duplicate the sort of thing that happened to Lieutenant Hultgreen. I'm at 60,000 feet. I've eased back on the throttle. I'm giving it hard rudder in order to increase the yaw angle, and I'm also trying to pull the nose up in order to increase the angle of attack, and that should induce instability into the airflow into my turbofan engine's compressors and produce a compressor stall. This turned out to be a lot easier said than done. So I thought to myself, well, if I want to introduce an extreme angle of yaw, I'll go full throttle on the afterburners, climb as high as I can get, and then hard rudder either side, doesn't matter, ease back on the throttle. So I'm going to approach stall speeds anyway, and then just when I'm about to stall out naturally, hard rudder to execute a hammerhead turn, which is done by using the rudder to drop the nose to the left or right. And listen to the engine. There, did you hear it? At least one of my engines just died. Yep, my right engine's died. I still have the left engine, but applying thrust to the right engine is just making the spin worse. So I'm forced to come back on the throttle. And now the right engine's died as well. So, does anybody know how you recover from a flat spin? Inside the cockpit, I can't even touch the controls. I'm being thrown around so much. I'm trying to relight the engines, but what I should be doing is recovering from the spin first and then relighting the engines. So, recovering from a flat spin is probably something that I should have looked up before actually putting myself into this situation. I seem to recall that you're supposed to apply rudder in the opposite direction of the spin, and that's worked. Now on the elevators to try to get the nose up, so I'm gliding, and I've done it. Now, of course, I need to get the engines reignited before I run out of speed. So I did take a quick look at the included documentation with DC Design's Tomcat, and there's something down here on the left-hand side of the pilot's console. There we go, air start switch. Turn that on. Let's crank the starters. And I don't know what FLCH is, but hey, what harm can it do? And now, I guess we cross our fingers, because it does take a while for these engines to spool up. If they do spool up... Oh, can you hear it? There it is. I've got at least one engine spooling up. Easy on the throttle just yet. I want to let it spool up properly, and then we'll actually start getting some thrust. Okay, you heard the sound of the engine kind of unspooling there. That's because I've got the throttle set to idle. So let's try throttling up and see what happens. And we're going to live. Yay! I've got thrust in one engine. You can hear the second engine starting to spool up. By God, I did it. Compressor stall, flat spin, recovered from the spin. I've got afterburner on the left engine. The right engine is still spooling up. And I should soon have full power available on both engines. DC Designs F14 Tomcat A and F14 Tomcat B. The most fun you can have in a Tomcat in a flight simulator that isn't DCS World. All I need to do now is figure out the autopilot so I can use the external showcase camera to more fully capture the sheer beauty of this aircraft in some of the world's most impressive spots. But right now I'm having so much fun with this thing, that isn't really at the top of my priority list. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my misadventures in the F-14. Concrete proof that as long as you've got enough altitude underneath you, anybody, even me, can get out of trouble. Hope you enjoyed this video, folks. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.